The lake was calm that morning, its surface glassy and still like it held secrets under its skin. I stood on the deck of my old log cabin, coffee in hand, watching the sun melt over Mirror Lake. I hadn't been up here in years. Retirement was 2 months away, and I needed time to breathe, to think. My name is Carter McGraw, police chief of Ridgeville, though up here, no one really knows that well, almost no one, the calm shattered by the roar of an engine. A matte black SUV sped up the gravel path, skidding to a stop inches from my no trespassing sign. Out stepped Karen and her son, Chase, the entitled teenage boy who thought the world owed him its finest lake views, with zero consequences. Karen was the head of the local HOA, but she acted like the queen of the entire mountain. She gave a half smile, the kind that curled like spoiled milk. "Chief McGraw," she said, voice sweet as poison. "Chase here is throwing a graduation party. We need your cabin for the weekend." I didn't say a word. I just sipped my coffee. Chase, tall, tanned, and brimming with unearned confidence, chimed in. "We already told our friends. It's happening." "You can find somewhere else, old man?" A silence settled. My badge wasn't visible. My gun wasn't on my hip. To them, I was just a graying man in flannel. Karen leaned in, voice low. "It's just a cabin. Don't make this difficult." They had no idea who they were talking to, no idea what this cabin meant to me, no idea what I've done to protect it. I gave a half smile of my own and said, "You have 24 hours to change your mind. After that, you'll wish you never came up this mountain." The flames clawed into the sky like the hand of a dying beast. I sprinted toward the boathouse, but the heat stopped me cold. The fire had already devoured the frame timbers, crackled, glass popped, and ash filled the air like snow from hell. My father's fishing boat, the one he built with his bare hands after coming home from Vietnam, the one we used every summer for 20 years gone, burned to a skeleton in minutes. I stood frozen. Not from shock, from rage. Chase stood at the top of the hill, grinning like a devil in designer shades. This wasn't just disrespect. It was a declaration. I called dispatch. "This is Chief McGraw. Get me Deputy Ellis now." Within 20 minutes, my old friend Ellis pulled up in an unmarked truck, raising his eyebrows at the carnage. I explained what happened without naming names, yet he looked me dead in the eye. "You want this handled off the record?" I shook my head. "I want it on every record. But first, I need a copy of that drone footage." See, what Karen and her boy didn't know was that this mountain was under federal wildfire surveillance. After the 2017 brush fires, drones were installed to monitor any heat signatures. I accessed the network from my laptop, logged in with my chief credentials. There it was, the footage, plain as day. Karen and Chase, stepping behind the boathouse, Chase holding a can of gasoline, Karen lighting a cigarette, and flicking the match. They didn't just trespass. They committed arson. I downloaded the clip, eyes narrowed, but I didn't go to their house. Not yet. No, I paid a visit to someone else first, a retired judge, my mentor, the only man who once saved me from a decision I almost couldn't live. With he opened the door before I knocked. "Carter," he said, voice gravelly. I figured it was time. I handed him the USB with the footage. "I need you to hold this. And if something happens to me, leak it to every news outlet from here to Sacramento." He gave me a look that said everything and nothing. Then I turned around and headed back to the cabin, loaded my service pistol, and opened the secret floorboard. Beneath the rug in the living room, inside was an old, dusty case with letters, a second badge, and something darker, something I promised I'd never need again. The music was deafening, bass thudded through the walls like a war drum. Teenagers stumbled across my porch, laughing, drinking, smoking. Someone was already puking into the flower bed my mother planted 30 years ago. My blood boiled, but I didn't rush outside. No, not yet. I watched from the dark like a shadow behind glass. Chase strutted in with 2 girls on his arm like he owned the place. Wearing my father's flannel? My father's flannel. He must have broken in and taken it from the closet. I saw it draped over his smug shoulders like some trophy. My fists clenched, nails digging into my palms. This wasn't a party. This was a provocation. I grabbed my badge and gun. For a moment I paused, staring at my reflection. Not the man I used to beat, no, something older, harder, more dangerous. I stepped onto the porch. The music faltered. Some turned, others laughed. Chase saw me and smirked. Oh, look who's awake. Hope you don't mind. Pops were breaking in the cabin. Step off my property, I said, voice low even. He raised a bottle. What property? You're not even listed on the HOA map, old man? Karen said this place is unregistered, technically abandoned. He didn't know my name. He didn't know my history, so I gave it to him. I pulled my badge and held it up into the light. Police Chief Carter McGraw, Ridgeville County. The silence that followed was delicious. The crowd began to murmur. Chase's cocky smile vanished like fog under sun. Wait, you're a cop? No, I said. I'm the cop. Karen's shrill voice cut through the silence. She appeared, behind the crowd, holding a cocktail, wearing high heels in the dirt. You can't scare my son with your little badge. You're off duty. This isn't even in your jurisdiction. Oh, but it is, I replied, stepping closer. And as of 5 minutes ago, this property has been declared a crime scene. Arson, trespassing, vandalism. You really should have checked. Whose cabin you were trying to steal? Karen's face twisted, her voice rising to a shriek. You can't do this. I know the mayor. I trained the mayor, I said coldly, back when he was still wetting his pants in ride-alongs. I turned to Chase. You've got 30 seconds to get every last one of your friends off this property before I radio in a sweep team. Underage drinking, drugs, property damage. One call, and half of you will be spending the night in the tank. But instead of obeying, Chase stormed up the steps. His eyes were wild now, panicked. He grabbed a rock. You think you can scare me? He screamed. You're just some washed-up old man in the woods? And before I could react, he hurled the rock straight at me. The fire caught fast. One flicker turned into a blaze in seconds, licking its way up the side of the cabin. The scent of burning cedar filled my lungs, sharp, familiar, haunting. Screams erupted as the crowd scattered, pushing and stumbling over one another. Red Solo cups flew. Someone tripped and broke a wrist on the porch steps, and through it all, Chase just stood there, frozen, like he didn't mean for this to happen, like setting the last fire wasn't deliberate, like this wasn't consequence, staring him in the face. I rushed for the hose, yanked it from its coil, and sprayed the flames. My shoulder screamed, too many years on duty, too many nights chasing shadows, but I kept going. Water met fire with a furious hiss, a duel of elements that felt too damn personal. I could hear my father's voice from long ago. Always protect the cabin, Carter, even when you're tired, especially then. Behind me, Karen was screeching into her phone. Yes, there's a fire at my son's party. Some lunatic cop is threatening us. Lunatic? I'd been called worse in this town, but just as I doused the last flame and turned around, a different kind of fire sparked in me, because Chase, this arrogant boy who tried to ruin everything, was trying to make a run for it. I dropped the hose and chased him down the hill, boots thudding against earth soaked with ash. The forest held its breath. The night stood still. When I caught him, I didn't draw my gun. I drew my history. I grabbed him by the collar and shoved him against a pine tree. Face to bark. Listen to me, you spoiled little brat, I growled. You've been playing with fire long before tonight. The pranks, the vandalism, the bullying, that wasn't just teenage mischief, that was escalation. And now you tried to burn down a police officer's home, with witnesses. With surveillance footage? He whimpered, trying to squirm away. You can't prove anything. I can, and I will. I snapped the cuffs on him with a click that echoed through the forest like a thunderclap. You're under arrest for arson, criminal trespass, destruction of private property, and reckless endangerment. Karen came running, mascara streaked from smoke and sweat. You can't arrest my son. I'll have your badge. I'll ruin you. I turned to her slowly, and for the first time in 15 years, I let the mask slip. You think this badge is all I've got? I whispered. I've buried friends. Stared down cartel members. Took a bullet for a governor you voted for. And you think I'm afraid of a bored housewife with a wine club and a clipboard? She stared, speechless. Good. Because I wasn't done, I turned to Deputy Ellis, who had just arrived with 2 more officers. Lights flashed red and blue across the trees. Book him, I said. And put Karen in the car, too. She's complicit, Ellis blinked. You sure? Very? Rain rolled in like a curtain the next morning. Thick, gray clouds hung low over Mirror Lake. As if the sky itself was brooding over last night's chaos, Chase and Karen were both in custody temporarily, at least. I'd pressed charges, pulled every string I still had, but something about Karen's final words kept gnawing at me. You think I'm the top of the food chain? Back at the station, Ellis handed me a file. You need to see this, he said quietly. It's not just Chase's first offense. There's a trail. Property damage reports, threats, fights swept under the rug, every time. Karen got it. Buried, always one call ahead of the consequences. I flipped through the documents, photos of vandalized mailboxes, slashed tires, even a hospital report. But then I saw something that stopped me cold. A sealed complaint, filed by a teacher from the high school 2 years ago against Chase for harassment, threats, violence, and scribbled across the top in red marker, "Do not pursue." Case closed by order of Councilman Whitaker. Councilman Whitaker. An old name. A familiar name, a man I once investigated before Karen and her ilk forced the case to quietly disappear. Before my cabin became the only place I had peace, I leaned back, staring out the window. This wasn't about a party. This was about power, corruption, entitlement. Karen was just a pawn in something bigger. And I just rattled the board. Ellis looked hesitant. You sure you want to keep pushing this? This could get messy. Whitaker's been fundraising for the next mayoral run. He's got friends, judges, developers. Let it get messy, I said, voice steady. That's when the truth comes out. I called in a favor from the only person who still owed me one in the city records office. Within the hour, she sent over property reports. And that's when everything snapped into focus. The lake. The cabin. My land was never abandoned. It had been targeted for months. Someone had been filing quiet legal challenges against the deed, trying to get it condemned. Then Karen's HOA suddenly claimed jurisdiction over the cabin road. They were clearing the way. For a land grab, the councilman had plans, a new luxury resort, right where my cabin sat. And Karen. She was just the middle woman, the social puppet. Chase, the bait, the fire, an excuse to get it declared unsafe. It was all orchestrated. I closed the laptop and stood. I'm going to see Chase, I said. Ellis raised a brow. Why? You think he'll talk? No, I said, grabbing my coat. I think he's ready to crack. And I was right. When I stepped into the cell, Chase sat on the bench, pale and shaking. His cocky grin was long gone. In its place, fear. Real fear. I sat down across from him, laid the drone footage on the table, along with the sealed complaint. Last chance, kid, I said. You talk now, and maybe you don't go away for good, but if you stay quiet, Whitaker won't protect you. He'll toss you to the wolves to save his own seat. Chase's lip quivered. Then, barely above a whisper, he said, They told me to scare you off. Just scare you off the property. But when you didn't leave, they told Mom to burn something. I leaned forward. Who told her? He stared. At the floor, Councilman Whitaker. And someone from the sheriff's department. Chief, Chase isn't alone in his cell. My blood ran cold. I bolted out of the interview room, heart pounding like war drums in my chest. The hallway lights flickered overhead, painting everything in jerky flashes of red. The emergency generators had kicked in, but just barely. Someone had cut power from the outside. Sabotage, planned, precise. I reached the holding wing just as 2 officers ran past me in panic. Someone's in the cell block with a key, one of them shouted. We don't know how they got in. He's in plain clothes, armed and threatening Chase. I shoved the door open. Inside, I saw Chase backed into the far corner of his cell, eyes wide, trembling like a trapped animal. And standing there with a suppressed pistol in his hand, Sheriff Cole. My old friend. My former second-in-command. He turned slowly, mask already off. Carter, he said calmly, like we were just sharing coffee. You weren't supposed to dig this deep. You? I growled. You were behind this? He nodded, expression unreadable. It was supposed to be clean. Karen gets you out of the cabin, Whitaker buys the land under a shell company, and the resort breaks ground in 6 months. You get a retirement payout. No one had to get hurt. You burned my father's boat, I snapped. You almost burned my home. That was Karen, he said with a bitter laugh. She went rogue. Tried to earn extra points with the councilman. You were never supposed to know. I looked at Chase. The kid was pale, frozen, muttering something under his breath. I raised my weapon. Back away from the boy, Cole. He didn't move. You're not going to shoot me, Carter. We've bled together. Buried secrets together. You don't have the stomach for it anymore? You're right, I said. But the body cam I'm wearing, Will, and every word you've said is already transmitted to my backup drive. He blinked. For the first time, doubt crept into his eyes. You always were a step too clean, he muttered, and took a step forward. Crack. A single shot rang out. It wasn't mine. It was Chase. He had grabbed the dropped pistol while Cole was distracted and now stood trembling, gun smoking in his hand. He was gonna kill me, he whispered, eyes wide and broken. I didn't mean... Cole slumped to the ground, bleeding out. No final words? Just silence. I stepped forward and took the gun gently from Chase's hands. You did what you had to, I said. But now, you have to help me finish it. 1 week later, the headlines hit like a hammer. Councilman arrested in mountain land scandal. Sheriff dead in corruption cover-up attempt. Chief Carter McGraw exposes multi-million-dollar scheme. Karen? She tried to cut a deal. But I made sure her plea didn't protect her from the arson charges. Whitaker? He's facing decades in federal prison. And Chase? He took the stand. Told the truth. The real truth. I gave the boy one thing he'd never been given before. A chance to be better. I stood on my cabin deck again as dawn broke over Mirror Lake. The boathouse still smelled faintly of smoke, but I'd started rebuilding, piece by piece. Just like my father taught me. Ellis joined me with 2 mugs of coffee. So, he said, sipping, you still thinking of retiring? I smiled, slow and tired, eventually. But not today, he said. I looked out over the water. The trees swayed, the lake shimmered, and real peace had returned. No, I said. Not today.